Order. The regular council meeting, May 9th, 2024. We've had regrets from one councillor. There's another councillor I haven't heard from, but I don't know if he's on his way or... As usual, invitation to stand and move around. Anybody who needs to move during the meeting, just feel tired of sitting down. We have an agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? Anybody? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved as read. Conflict of interest, if you have conflict of interest declaration on any of the items, you can do now, or you can wait until the item comes up if you find at the time that it comes up. The next item that we have is presentation. We have Marty King, Marine Protected Area, and we will turn the floor over to you. You can turn your mic on.
Test.
You're on.
Sound good? I'm not used to having a mic. This is dangerous. So I think Scott is going to show my slides. Yeah, so. Okay, thanks everyone. I want to thank Dan Fleck. I think he was the one that suggested that you invite me to make a presentation today. My name is Marty King. I'm with Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I work at the Bedford Institute of Oceanography in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. I work in what's called the Marine Planning and Conservation group at DFO. My main responsibility is to lead a process to develop a long-term spatial plan for marine conservation for the Scotian Shelf and Bay of Fundy bioregion. So that's the entire Scotian Shelf, the entire Bay of Fundy, and including the Canadian portion of Georges Bank. So we just initiated a public engagement period back on April 29th. So as part of that process, we're also doing in-person meetings upon request. So today, that's really the purpose of my presentation, is to give you a very quick overview of, over 2 decades of work that's kind of gone into this. We spent a lot of time engaging with the fishing industry, and I'd like to illustrate how we've, really taken that feedback that we received from people like Dan from the various fishing associations, and really taken that to heart and taken it into account in developing this process. It's a long-term process. This is one point in the process, and we'll be talking about this for quite a while after we reach the point of having a final plan. So I can go to the next. You can go to the next slide there, Scott. Thank you. So really quickly, outline here, just want to present to you our Marine Conservation Network Plan, as we call it, give you some information on the public engagement process, which is from April 29th to June 29th. And then I thought we could just zoom into the Southwest Nova Scotia portion of the plan and take a look at some of the specific sites. Again, we only have a few minutes here, so I'll try to be as brief as possible to leave time for questions. So this is just a little bit of national context. So Canada has made a very strong commitment to protect 30% of our oceans by the year 2030. That's through the International Convention on Biological Diversity, which is through the United Nations. So Canada, along with over 190 other countries, have signed on to this and made this commitment. Right now, we're at 14.66%. That's currently protected. This map is from our website, and it just gives you an idea of how that protection is distributed throughout the country. So from the Pacific Ocean to the Arctic Ocean and to the Atlantic Ocean. Not a great map, but we'll zoom into the Scotia Fundy portion of that. It's really important to point out with this 30%, it's not just any 30%. We're looking for what we call ecological representation. So we want to protect examples of all of the major habitats that you would find in each of Canada's 3 oceans. So as you can imagine, there's very different habitats in the Arctic than you would find here in the Atlantic coast, and same with the West Coast. So we want that variety across, throughout the three oceans, but even within the three oceans. Habitat, off of Yarmouth here is very different to what you would find in the innermost portions of the Bay of Fundy, which is very different from what you would find in the deep waters off the edge of the Scotian Shelf. So we want a little bit of everything. That's kind of the general approach to protecting marine biodiversity, which is really what this commitment is about. Under the Oceans Act, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans is responsible for leading the development of a national network of marine protected areas. So it's really, so we're doing this on behalf of the Government of Canada, and we're doing it in different parts of the country. And collectively, across those three oceans, we'll have our national plan. And it's very much a work in progress. It's also a collaboration. It's really important to point out that DFO is working closely with the Canadian Wildlife Service and Parks Canada. We're the three agencies that have the ability and the mandate to create protected areas in the ocean. You can go to the next slide there, Scott. So this is our current Marine Conservation Network plan. So this is the subject of the consultation that we're currently in. I'll explain the map very quickly. The yellow areas are existing marine protected areas or other types of spatial conservation measures. So the yellow areas are already in place, and they add up to 14.88% of our current bioregion. The reddish, kind of pinkish salmon colored areas, I guess you could say, those are what we call areas of interest for Oceans Act MPA designation. So these are sites that are currently proposed and in the process of becoming regulatory protected areas under the Oceans Act. The blue areas, there's two different shades there. These are the areas that we're really consulting on through this process. So they're proposed network sites. The darker shaded areas are what we call tier 1 sites. These are sites that are, I would say, more of the shorter term priorities for designation. Now that doesn't mean that they're all going to be implemented right away. It really just means, I think, for that 2030 timeframe, any sites that we want to designate by that 2030 timeframe would be selected from these darker blue areas. But we're not saying that they're all going to be implemented by 2030. That's a very important distinction to make, and we can get into that later. The lighter blue areas are tier 2 sites. These are sites that, still would be very important to establish if we want to complete our representative, ecologically representative network of marine protected areas. But there are areas that maybe need a little bit more science to understand the distribution of the ecological features in the area, and maybe need a little bit more exploration of the current and potential future uses in these areas. So again, our public engagement period started on April 29th. It's going for 2 months to June 29th. We'll be making revisions in the fall of 2024, and we're aiming to finalize the plan by the end of 2024. And I mentioned this earlier, but the work on this dates back over 2 decades. I mean, I've been in my current position for 13 years, and this is what I've been working on almost exclusively during that time frame. Really important to point out, when the plan is finalized, nothing changes on the water. It's still just a plan. So it's essentially going to be used to guide the selection of future marine protected areas in this region. So that's really what we're working toward. Finalize the plan, and then any new sites that we select would be selected based on the plan. So that does a few things. First of all, and most importantly, it provides certainty. So if there are other industry sectors that are interested in, establishing or opening up in this region, then they know these are areas that are probably going to be off limits to certain industry sectors, especially heavy industrial development, but also for existing users, including the fishing industry. They know what the long-term plan is, moving forward with marine conservation. And the other thing I want to say before we go to the next slide is, thanks to the dialogue that we've been having with people like Dan and his counterparts throughout the whole region, the fishing associations from Cape Breton all the way to the Inner Bay of Fundy, We've kind of realized that because fisheries like lobster and other kind of traditional coastal fisheries are so crucial to the culture and the economy of coastal communities, that, a fishery like lobster shouldn't be restricted within these areas. So a marine protected area can come in various shapes and sizes and various levels of protection, right? So we're now trying to be proactive and working with people like Dan, and we even have a working group that's kind of devoted to this subject. But we want to try and paint a picture of what a successful coastal marine protected area can look like, and one that's not only supported by the inshore fishing sector, but actually benefits the inshore fishing sector, right? So that's kind of something that I'm pretty passionate about. And, I live in a coastal community, a fishing community outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Cow Bay, Eastern Passage. And, I understand firsthand, how important the fishery is to the local culture and the community and the economy, of course. So, I feel like this is a really key message that I want you to receive today, is that this is not about trying to shut down industry, right? It's about, striking the right balance. We can meet these targets, we can meet these commitments in ways that have very minimal impact on the fishing sector and other sectors. So, if we're systematic in how we do our planning, we take all the best available information on fishing effort distribution, on aquaculture distribution, even on proposed future development areas. If we have an idea of where these developments might be interested in occurring, then we can kind of work around them to a certain extent, right? If we're systematic in how we do it. So we can go to the next slide there. I'm doing a lot of talking today. I need some water. Yeah, so this is just what the public engagement period looks like. Really, we're relying on an online survey. That's kind of the main kind of mechanism that we want to capture public feedback. We have a nice interactive map. I did send the link to the pre-recorded webinar. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to look at that, but that gives you some background information. We did our first virtual Q&A session yesterday. We did one at 3 to 4 p.m. and another one in the evening from 6 to 7 p.m. Not great attendance, but I think we're doing another one on June 5th. I think that one will probably be more well attended or better attended. The interactive map is nice. You can click on a site. You can learn about what we would want to be protecting in that area. You can learn about what type of human activities are occurring in that area. It's really just a snapshot, and there's links to the survey. The survey only takes about 10 minutes unless you want to really provide specific feedback. So an area like Chebogue Bay, which is obviously right here in your jurisdiction, if you wanted to provide detailed feedback on that, or any of your constituents wanted to provide detailed feedback on that, they can go into the interactive map or into the survey and provide specific comments on that area. So we're encouraging people to do that. And then in-person engagement sessions, we're making those available upon request. And this is a good example. This was a requested engagement, and that's why we're here today. So I think it was really important that we came down and made this presentation in person. Next slide, this is just the overall map again. This is kind of what the interactive map looks like on our website. And the sites are listed along the left-hand side. And Chebogue Bay is the first on the list. That doesn't mean it's the top priority for implementation or anything like that. And then this is just zooming in on this particular, the Southwest Nova kind of portion of the region. And you can see there's, a number of sites. I'm not sure on this map, Chebogue is 10. Yeah. So Chebogue is number 10, Eel Bay and McNutt's Island, those are 11 and 12. Those were added in the latest round of revisions, mostly due to eelgrass. They're important areas for eelgrass. Number 13 is obviously a very large site. That's one of the sites that's to be led by, you may have seen a recent CBC article on this. Dan was actually, sorry, Dan, I'm really referencing you a lot here, but you were, Dan had a good interview, I thought, in there. And, I think some of the discussions we've been having with industry, hopefully is taking away some of the fear. Because, I mean, when you see a big polygon like that and you think marine protected area, like, if we're talking about no activities in there, then that's, pretty significant economic impact, right? But I mean, I think Parks Canada's, and they're working with Bear River First Nation in kind of a partnership, and their vision for that area is very consistent with what we've been talking about with the inshore fishing sector and, minimizing any potential negative impacts. Lobster and other traditional kind of lower impact type fisheries would be compatible with this area. And, the only fisheries that really kind of can't occur in these coastal marine protected areas would be the mobile bottom gear fisheries. So scallop drags, there's a little bit of scallop dragging in this area, a little bit of mobile groundfish out in LaHave Basin. But overall, these are just study areas. Whether it's us or Parks Canada or the Canadian Wildlife Service, when we do proceed with, trying to actually designate an area, there's a whole additional more in-depth engagement and consultation period. To create an Oceans Act marine protected area, and that's the main DFO tool for marine protected areas, it takes 5 to 7 years. So let's just say we wanted to make Chebogue, Canada's next Oceans Act MPA for this region. We would initiate a whole nother, much more in-depth, much more detailed engagement analysis phase where we describe the ecosystem, we do new science, we get a really clear understanding of the socioeconomic importance of the area, we article all of the fisheries, all of the historical landings for those fisheries, other types of activities in the area, understanding how important it is to the communities. And then, there's not a number of steps that we go to before it becomes a regulation under the Oceans Act. So this is, like I said earlier, like this is just the plan. When we actually pick a new site that we want to designate, it triggers this whole other more formal stepwise process. You can probably go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just, I wanted to include this slide because the area off Briar Island there is also close to your neighborhood. So you'd have, people that would live in your municipality would fish in number 9 because that's within LFA 34. You can go to the next slide, I think, and maybe the next one. Yeah, I think this is probably where I'll stop, and then we can dig into some other more detail if you want with the questioning. But just a recap, so the plan is to be completed by the end of the year, this calendar year. It will guide the selection of future sites, and then that, like I just said, will trigger a whole additional process that takes multiple years. Having the plan in place provides more certainty for marine users, whether those be current marine users or future marine users, and evergreen and adaptable. With climate change, with new emerging industry sectors, we will be, making any adaptations that are necessary on a fairly regular basis, maybe in a 5 to 10 year time frame. We would make adjustments to the network plan because it is going to be implemented over the longer term. So that's a lot of information. Sorry, I do my best work in the mornings. I'm a little, I was kind of rambling a little bit there, but I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. And I want to thank Dan again, give him one last shout out for, suggesting that I come down. I'm really happy that we're here, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And my colleague, Kyle Gordon's here as well, and he may help answer some questions.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Surratt.
I looked at the video. By the way, good presentation. And the video is great. Awesome. Really explains that, MPA, I think it's called. On the video, it showed the sites, and some of them are feeder sites. So the marine protected area, then they feed the next. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's the idea.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's the idea with like a network, right? So
like a network.
What makes a network different from just a a shotgun pattern of marine protected areas is it's designed in a way the sites are to complement each other. And in some cases, there's actually connections, ecological connections through something like species migration between the different sites. It's a hard thing to evaluate and incorporate into the design, but we did try to do it. And I can give you one example. If we go back to the map there, Scott. I don't have a laser pointer here with me, but yeah, go back to the first one that you went to there, the full regional map. Yeah. So that number 34, we consulted, we did targeted consultation on the first iteration of this map back in 21, 22. So we sent it out to all of our key stakeholder groups and said, we want to get your feedback on this. We want to get ready to do public consultation. This was a few years ago. And so we asked for feedback, and we also incorporated some new science information into that. And one of the key kind of contributions from science was they did a connectivity analysis on cold water corals. Now, cold water corals, some of you may be familiar with what they are, but there's basically forests on the ocean floor that grow in like outside of the photic zone. So it's outside, not like tropical corals. Similar. I mean, they're a living organism.
Oh, they are living.
Yeah, invertebrate, but they get their food not from sunlight and photosynthesis. They get it through filtering food out of the water column, right? So I don't know if I can't really point to the screen up there. Maybe I can. I get excited when I talk about this stuff. But,
It's all right.
Corals are, they basically grow. They take hundreds to thousands of years to form these forests, and the corals could be bigger than me, right? And a lot of the fishermen that along the bottom lawn liners, they'll bring them up sometimes. Some of them have them on their lawn as lawn ornaments, right? On Clark's Harbor, yeah. So I mean, they do get caught up in the fishing gear, and I think for the most part, fishermen want to avoid them for that reason, right? So. But we have, the densest areas of coral are here in the Northeast Channel between Georges and Browns. And the gully, this is the first marine protected area that we established.
That's the gully.
Because it's actually, the 20-year anniversary is this week of the creation of the gully. So that's the first one we had. That's really important for coral. And these other canyons along the eastern Scotian shelf edge, this area was put in place for coral protection, right? And that's a big focus for the Funny Channel area of interest as well. So what our coral scientists have figured out through doing genetic studies and these modeling, looking at ocean currents on the seafloor, and these things occur like 200 to 600 meters deep. So it's like almost half a kilometer deep. You have these forests on the seafloor, and they're not just protected because we want to protect them. They actually provide habitat for species like redfish and cusk and other groundfish species. So they add structure to the seafloor. And that, critters live in that structure, right? So anyway, this Ellen Kenchington is one of the leading global scientists on cold water coral. She's done modeling, and her research has shown that this area is very important to connect the coral gene flow between this area and down here.
Get out of here.
Corsair Canyon is another area that has a lot of coral. So we've kind of proven that there is this connectivity, but if we didn't protect this Logan Canyon area, then there may not be that connection that she's predicting there. So that's an example of how we're looking at, that connectivity aspect of designing the network. It's not just a random selection of sites, right? The other big thing is that representation, that ecological representation that I talked about. So, we want to have examples of canyon habitats, we want to have examples of bank habitats, we want to have examples of basin habitats, because you have different biological communities that live in those different habitat types. Right?
So fish live 600 meters, there's fish that deep?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a fisherman, maybe Calvin would know that, but
yeah.
I'm not used to, yeah.
Yeah, we met with some fishermen at the Yarmouth office earlier today. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question on 34.
Yeah.
Do you have ROV videos of coral in that specific
In
area?
that specific one?
Is that from real Logan into
Yeah, it's Logan. Yeah.
do you guys have video of that, of coral there?
We have records We have,
You have video.
we don't have video, no, and
I
that's,
fish there though.
yeah,
I've never seen coral.
you've never seen coral? Okay,
Not there, we
Yeah.
fish from 300 fathoms to
Yeah.
about 185.
yeah,
Never seen coral there.
okay, yeah, and
The rest of the
that's,
boxes, I would not say I have. But that one there in particular, I'm really trying to figure out where you found it.
yeah, there's observer data, like from the Fishery Observer Program, and there's, trawl survey, a couple trawl survey records from that area.
Right on.
Those would be the records, so that's why that area is that lighter shade of blue, because it's one of those areas that we need to do more science to understand, right? So,
All right, thank you.
yeah, yeah, no problem. I'll go back to the chair.
Missed it by that much.
Thank you.
Thank you, great question.
I have Councillor D'Entremont.
Councillor,
I think
you were before me. I seen you press your button.
I was trying to.
All right, I'll ask the questions.
You were the first.
All right, thank you. I come from a fishing background. My father was a fisherman, my grandfather was a fisherman. And I have a 24-year-old son who's a fisherman now. I have a 2-year-old grandson who maybe someday wants to become a fisherman. So just wondering about the future. I mean, you know, we implement these MPA areas, but, you know, once Marty King is gone and Calvin D'Entremont are gone, you know, what's to say that things won't change? Let's say, you know, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The right whale shows up in one of those areas during lobster season. What happens then, you know? Do they shut it down? Do they, you know? That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Because, again, you know, we talk about social economic, in this area, the fishery is it, you know?
It is, for sure.
And it's in our blood, it's in our veins.
Yeah, you know, I can see that, and, you know, I have spent a lot of time here talking to, you know, fishing, you know, boards of directors from various fishing associations, and certainly can see that. And, you know, that specific point about the right whale, it's a good example, because, you know, a marine protected area can only offer so much in terms of protection, and a static year-round marine protected area is not the right type of conservation measure to protect a right whale, which is highly migratory, right? And it's only in our region for, you know, a few months of the year, right? So we're not trying to, so back when we, you know, started to design this, we made the decision that for these highly migratory species, that they're only seasonal visitors, we're not going to try and capture habitats for those species in these areas. Now, Dan would probably know better than I would, but there are measures in place right now that if a right whale does show up, then in an area, there's a right whale sighting, then we do have to remove gear from the water, right? But it's just until, I don't know, Dan, do you know the details of it?
It's 14 days, and if it's seen again as a static and a dynamic closure, if it's moving, it might move around, and there's different gear that can be in the area.
Yeah, so that's a good example of, you know, an MPA, it's good at protecting things like corals that don't have tails and don't swim around, but it's not great at moving or protecting these highly migratory species that are, you know, they may be here one year, maybe the next year we don't see any of them, right? Like, so we're really trying to focus on, you know, the habitat, the benthic habitat, right? And, or the bottom habitat, and, you know, getting examples of all of the various types of habitats, the basin habitat, the bank habitat, et cetera. So, you know, a marine protected area can only do so much, and we acknowledge that, you know, it's not suitable for protecting those highly migratory species. And, you know, I really do feel like, you know, a marine protected area that adheres to what we've been talking about with the inshore fishing fleet. So basically allows traditional fisheries to continue, lobster being king, you know, in most areas. I feel like not only can it, you know, it's not going to have any economic impact, it can actually protect the fishery from the unknown of the future, right? Like, what actually can impact a fishery in a negative way, right? So, we've been hearing a little bit of that type of thinking, and, you know, I think certainly, you know, I think there's room for all types of new economic development, but doing it in the right places, under the right circumstances is really important. And this type of, you know, conservation planning approach, I think, you know, coastal protected areas and lobster fishing can be mutually beneficial. Like, we can achieve what we want to achieve from a biodiversity conservation standpoint, and, you know, the fishery can continue as is, and maybe even learn a little bit more about the ecosystem, because when we do create a marine protected area, we get like dedicated resources to do new science, right? So we have a site off of Cape Breton that was established in 2016 called St. Anne's Bank, and it's a larger site that kind of extends out into the deeper water, but the coastal component, you know, we drew this coastal zone within the MPA, that we drew it based on the lobster fishing footprint, because the first thing that they told us in communities like Lewisburg and Manitou and, you know, Glace Bay was that, you know, don't touch our lobster fishery, right? Like, first and foremost, don't touch our So we were like, okay, we can work with that. So, and now they're actually, some of the Cape Breton fish harvesters, which is one of the fishing associations up there, they're doing contract work to go out and help with the science that's occurring in the area. So there are some, you know, is that comparable to what you're making on a lobster license? Probably not, but it's, you know, it's something to do in the off season. You're learning more about your own fishery. You're learning more about the ecosystem in which you're fishing in. You know, I think there's some other kind of positive spin-offs of these types of things. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that in there.
One more question.
Yep.
I think there's an MPA that encompasses, you said Chibok, which would encompass some of the Tuscan Islands, one of our gyms that we have here.
Yeah, I do have a slide on that, Scott, if you want to just advance it.
So I guess my question is, would an area like this impact any kind of activity because on the Tuscan Islands? Because there's people that have shanties and camps, and there's, you know, commercial fishery going out of there.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, you can keep going down. This one, it should be the first one. Yeah, so that's like, this is a zoom in on Chibok, that Chibok area. So it does include the Tuscan Islands. And, you know, to answer your question, you know, we wouldn't anticipate there being any restrictions on accessing those islands, and we can't do anything to restrict activities on the islands. So, you know, we wouldn't want to change any of that. I mean, to me, that's part of the charm of that site, right? Like, that's a beautiful area. There's not a lot of scallop fishing in that area, if any, like within that blue polygon. So there really wouldn't be any fishing impacts of that on that area, right? And we were really interested in Lobster Bay, you know, more from a salt marsh, eelgrass kind of standpoint. But, you know, we know that there's the current, you know, process that you're looking at for shellfish aquaculture and kelp aquaculture as well. So we didn't want to, you know, we didn't want to interfere with that or create any kind of confusion, you know, by including that. But there's a lot of ecological values in Lobster Bay as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Sonia.
Thank you, Warden. I watched or looked at your presentation. It's good, and in line with Councillor Dottermo's questions. I'm a retired fisherman. I've fished for 44 years, and I've just been retired for 6 years, so I'm quite still aware of what goes on in the fishery. And my concern is for the fishermen is sustainable fishery in years to come. So I look at the past for when I started fishing and what the biomass sizes were. Like the herring biomass was huge, the groundfish biomass was huge, the lobster industry was relatively small compared to today. But the lobster biomass has increased tremendously,
little bit of trouble every once in a while, but the rest has gone down. And I'm wondering if there's anything in your research that you're doing to make sure that the groundfish and herring industry can grow some more, get a larger biomass. In the past, I think we all looked at things and said, you know, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. However, I've learned that in fishing, if you wait till it's broken, you're late. And you're much too late. And try to bring it back. Newfoundland's a great example of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering in your research, if you touch on that.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I don't personally do research, but I mean, obviously DFO does, you know, we have a massive, you know, science branch that does all of the science work, whether it be on corals or on groundfish or on lobster. So, you know, I would say, is there research on how to increase, you know, biomass in like the forage fish like herring or the groundfish? I wouldn't say that, but one thing I would say that I think is, I don't know of any research that's, you know, working on kind of how we're going to rebuild that biomass. Because, you know, as you know, being a fisherman, you know, sometimes when the biomass of one thing goes up, the other, something else goes down. So, you know, groundfish eat a lot of baby lobster. So, you know, part of the reason lobster has done so well since groundfish has gone down is maybe because there's not as many predators around, but I don't know if that's proven or not. But again, I'm not a scientist. But one thing that we've seen in the last decade or so, I guess, is, and sorry, what was your name?
Derek Dahl.
Derek?
Yes.
Yeah. One thing Derek would probably be able to tell you better than I would is halibut biomass has gone up a lot in recent years. So I'm assuming that's what you're fishing out at Logan?
No, I'm an otter trawler. Though.
Oh, you're a trawler, okay.
Yeah, but I can explain why
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
halibut came back.
Yeah.
Basically, we stopped. We were at one point, we were 440 draggers on the dragons
Yeah.
and shells. Now we're down to 27.
Yeah,
So the babies get to grow.
yeah.
Right, so we don't kill them.
There's
Basically,
less pressure.
less
Yeah,
pressure.
yeah.
We're down to less than 10% pressure than there was in the early 90s when it
Yeah.
was landfill. And keep in mind that in 1987, there was 3,700 50 fishermen as well in Scotia Bundy.
Yeah,
Right, 440 draggers, 3,750. So the pressure went.
that's a lot of capacity.
Yeah, I think we're down to 140, I think,
Yeah.
fifth year now.
Yeah.
Give or take, don't quote me 100%, but it's not much more. And the otter trawler is down to like the 28, 30-ish.
It's a better balance for
So
sure.
they get the chance to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, like, halibut, Atlantic halibut, which is very valuable, as you know, groundfish species, is the biomass has gone up and the quota's gone up. We were talking with somebody today at the Yarmouth office that fishes a lot of halibut, you know, throughout the whole region. So he's very interested in the maps that we have, and, you know, some of them overlap with some of his key fishing areas, right? But he was saying that some of the areas that we already have protected, like the gully area between just east of Sable Island, that's the one that was our first marine protected area. You're allowed to fish halibut in part of that area, but not in the deepest portions where we have all the coral. And he said those deep areas are where the larger halibut are, right? So they're not being caught. So, you know, by leaving the big, older, mature females in the water, right? Those are the ones that produce, they call them super spawners because they produce so many more eggs. Like a cod that's this big, you know, might produce 1 million eggs, where a cod that's this big would produce 50 million eggs. Like it goes up kind of exponentially, the number of eggs that they produce. I'm probably butchering this. An actual biologist would probably correct me on some of this stuff, but the idea, I mean, is keeping those big super spawners in the water, so they're producing eggs and, you know, producing more spawn, and you know, you get recovery of biomass from that, right? So I would say that's the way that this process could benefit the recovery of the groundfish.
Okay, if I may, one more. Excuse me. The Chibok area, this is for the fishermen. When you propose a protection area, it implies restrictions. should the fishermen be concerned? I'm specifically talking about the fishermen in our district, in Argyle. Should they be concerned about your restrictions or any restrictions within the area in our district?
Yeah, an area like that, like Chabot, is a really good example of what we see as like a coastal site where we would not be proposing restrictions on lobster, on bait fisheries, on, ground fish, fixed gear fisheries. The only restrictions would be on mobile bottom gear, but I don't think there's a lot, if any, scallop activity in that polygon. So, but patterns change, as you know, fishing for 44 years. So maybe historically there were some mobile bottom gear fishing in that area, but I think it's all pretty rough, hard bottom in around Tuscan Islands and stuff, right? So,
It's not been artificial for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been closed in there for, I don't
Yeah.
think it's never about 30 years. 30, 40 years.
so I mean, I think based on what's happening there now, I don't think those fisheries would be impacted. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, when we announced the site, and honestly, we have Chabot on there as a tier 1 site, which means technically it could be on the table for consideration. We don't have it as a high priority, where based on some of the feedback we received, we're not really trying to push that site. But if there's an appetite for doing something there from industry and from the community, we would certainly elevate it on our list, right? But I mean, these are scary, when you're a fisherman and, when you see these maps and you think about where you've fished and where you're fishing now, like, they're scary, and everyone wants to protect their livelihood. So your first instinct is always going to be, I don't want this, right? But, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer, and hopefully we're getting the message out more and more that, an MPA doesn't mean no fishing, right? There are MPAs in the world and even some portions of MPAs in our region where there's no fishing allowed, but coastal areas, we're saying, blanket statement, no restrictions on lobster or those other lower impact fisheries. And have I been saying that a lot lately?
May I ask
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
if I may further Councillor Saulnier's comments there. I am a stickler for details. I've been to many of these.
Excuse me. No, nobody can hear. See, we're online.
Oh, I'm
right?
sorry.
And if they talk from that area.
Right.
You can come, you come to a mic if you're going to say something.
Thank you for attending, Mr. King. Your presentation was great. I am a stickler for details, and I've heard many times this evening, shouldn't and wouldn't. Can you tell us when shouldn't and wouldn't will be can't and won't? We want to know when it's going to be written in stone that those areas
Yeah.
will be protected for lobster fishing. Thank you.
You can go to that mic over there. Did you
I
answer?
wanted-
Oh, you answered there.
Thank you.
yeah.
I didn't know if you were answering or asking a question.
Yeah.
That was my question and comment. Thank you.
That's a great point. And, when Dan asked me that question at other meetings, I always say, only under the most unique and rare circumstances would there, like, restrictions on a fishery like lobster ever be considered. If we discovered some kind of rare, unique kind of species that's highly sensitive to that type of gear, then in theory, there could be restrictions. But I was going to say I would bet my career on it. I've said that before, and didn't change careers, thank God.
I can say you lose your career if you stop the lobster fishery.
Yeah.
You're still
Oh,
here.
exactly. I mean, this is my reputation on the line when I say this, and we're going out on a limb a little bit, because technically when we announce an area of interest for an MPA, we do have to go through that process. But we're trying to get ahead of that and be more proactive and be able to give that clear answer to that question that Dan just asked. And I haven't really answered it. I would say 99.99999% sure that there would be no impacts on lobster, right?
Did you have
Someday.
your light
We'll get to
on?
100
You're
someday.
good?
Pretty close
Okay.
to one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, and apologies for
Yeah.
being informal.
This is interesting.
It's just that if you're not in the mic, people that are watching can't hear what's in the back at all. Councillor Dontamore, you have another question.
More of a comment. I guess there's an online survey you can fill out. I think we should encourage all our not just the fishermen, all local people to fill out the survey. Because there's probably a lot of things here that we haven't thought about, that
Yeah.
people will think about and say, hey, how about this? How about this, right? So I think it's important that we get as much, people involved in commenting and trying to figure out, because it's got to be done right. Because, again, it's our livelihood here, it's our social, economical, economic, this is our bread and butter. This is what, makes us tick, so, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the great comments. And we would appreciate it if you would encourage people to fill out the survey.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, I thank you very much for your presentation. There was a lot of information there, and I'm sure, especially the fishermen who are really concerned about what's happening in their fishing grounds, are happy to hear what's going on. And I wouldn't have had too many questions because I've never fished in my life. Minnows, but.
Those might be impacted down the road, too.
That's true. Well, I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. And, you have my contact information if you have, you need follow-up information.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll continue on. The next item is adoption of minutes. We have the April 25th Executive Council meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? I guess not.
The omission might be that you asked a question.
I asked a question. So the minutes to stand approved as read.
Yes.
The other adoption of minutes is May the 1st, 2024, special budget meeting minutes. Any errors or omissions in that one? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved as presented. Financial report, we will go to Marcia,
Thank
and
you.
you're on.
Thank you, Ward Muse. So these numbers are part of the operating budget presentation, which is in the white column of the operating budget presentation that's attached there. As you've all previously seen these numbers, I will go over the first 3 pages at a high level, as there's very little changes in, if any. The year-end financials are showing a surplus of $408,664,000. Approximately $27,000 of that belongs to the other sewers and water utility committees, and they'll be transferred appropriately. This leaves the municipality operating fund with a net surplus of $381,742. Over $161,000 of that surplus is an increase. It is captured in revenues above and over and above, what was budgeted. The largest variance being the return of investments. We had budgeted an increase in anticipation of the rising interest rates, however, never anticipated such a large increase. Interest on taxes were also up $24,000 higher than budgeted. The deed transfer was up $17,000, which is always a hard one to budget. We provided inspection services to our neighboring municipalities throughout the year as well, which was not known at the time or before the budget approval. And lastly, staff was successful in receiving funding for summer student positions after budget approvals, which increased the revenues as well. When we look at the expenses on page 2, the largest variance or savings is under police protection. If you remember, at the time of budget deliberations last year, there was talk of an RCMP retroactive pay, which was budgeted as a contingency, however, did not occur. There was also an expense budgeted for medical clinics, however, was not needed at year end. Recreation is showing a surplus, which most of that is due to not as many summer students being hired as budgeted, and a capital project that was budgeted for, however, was dependent on receiving funding to offset the costs, which they did not receive. The remaining savings are dispersed throughout the remaining departments, with staff working very diligently at saving where possible and being successful in receiving funding for other projects and costs. So that's the bulk of the presentation. I'm open for questions if anybody has any.
Any questions? No questions coming up. So the next attachment, municipal operational budget and prior year comparison.
Excuse me, Danny, could we have a motion to
A
accept?
motion to accept.
If you don't mind?
Yeah. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Contrary-minded, carried.
Thank you.
So next is the operational budget. And this one here, is there any discussions on that? Are we going through this? I see our CAO.
Mr. Chair, similarly to Marcia's presentation, you have seen these numbers more than once, so the presentation is going to be brief, and it will not necessarily go into the details in a high level, but I will go through, take a small moment to discuss the strategy and the approval, the potential approval of the budget. So whenever Tina can find her pen, we'll.
Yeah, okay.
So,
No, it's
Ms.
plastic,
Ms.
it goes
Camo,
in the other
that was
can.
recycling. Put it in the garbage. Could we make a phone call to Waste Check, please? And with your permission, I will commence.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I just want to talk overall about the strategy, how we got to where we are. I think that this has been a number of months of work, not all of it on camera, some of it in public meeting off camera, still public, but not necessarily seen by everyone, going through the details of the budget. We talked a long time about how we're going to help our residents this year, knowing that the taxes and the assessments have gone up sharply. Many of our residents panicked initially when they saw that, then realized that they're protected by the cap on assessment. I won't go into any details on what that means here today, but essentially capped their increase to 3.2%. And so that was relieving to many of our residents who were feeling the pinch on all sorts of inflationary reasons. I'll say that the tax rates on this operating budget remain the same. And before we go into too much detail, I'll say it's the same but. And the but is the biggest part of this budget in my mind, is that you strategically decided that you were going to significantly increase your low-income exemption for residents. Your exemption is by far, if not 3 times higher than any other local municipality. You made the decision to support an upward threshold of up to almost 64,000. It was a little less than that.
65.
It might have been 65. It was in that range. Forgive me for not having the exact number. And what's basically saying that the family income up to that amount, that particular family, if they applied, could get a rebate. And so the rebates were dependently on how high the income was, the rebate was lower. You managed to distribute a little shy of $93,000 this year. That's up $50,000 from last year. What does all this mean? What it means is that you provided more money than a likely tax decrease to the families that needed it the most. So when people say, well, your tax rates didn't change, that is correct. But your rebate was more than doubled. So that was strategy, and that's included in this budget here today. The other strategy is that we're having to put a little bit more money away for the future, and I think post-COVID construction is one of those reasons. There's a lot of construction costs in the future that we have to start anticipating. Many things are more expensive than they used to be. Other highlights in the budget that are, I would say, new are you are the beneficiary of a $150,000 rebate that is going to happen each year. So that's your corrections and your housing costs you used to pay for every year to the province. That has now disappeared. So that is now being absorbed by the province. That's the good. The new investments, and there are some, contemplate a potential public transportation program, which has not been set in stone, but we still have to budget for something while we plan. We have invested some of the housing savings into local housing initiatives. So we are going to look at the hiring and looking at the studies associated with attainable housing in this region. And as you already know, under your capital budget, you've approved an extension for the J.E. Hatfield Court, which will allow for lots to be developed in Tuscan, hopefully in the near future. Other things that I would note is taxation did go up about 8%, and some of that we obviously gave back, to my point around the rebate. Other areas from an expenditure perspective, you had absorbed a lot of increases in school appropriations, policing costs, and garbage collection. Those are your top three big ticket items that went up significantly this year. Schools at 10%, RCMPs at 6%, and 5 and change for garbage collection. So those are your big three areas where you really had very little choice other than to invest in those services. I will make a note that your Director of Finance every year presents a document that is attached to this agenda that shows what out of all of the funds that you budget for, how much of this is outside of your control. And so every year we go over this. I'm not going to go over the details there for you, but every year we know that there's quite a few expenses that we do not control. They control us. Contributions for services or contracted services or even regional services. So they're all listed there for your information. I'll highlight just one or two other initiatives that I think are notable because we talked about them in our priority sessions. One is a fire service review, which we have already completed. And the other is an anticipation that will cost us an investment of money into the future. So about $30,000 for each of those. 30 to finish, and then 30 contemplating some sort of reaction that will come out of recommendations. It is too early to know what that number could be, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions as the year goes on. I'd say outside of those items, I'd say that your public health services are now focused almost entirely on recruitment and retention. We pay the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce to engage a regional doctor recruitment navigator, and they are working very diligently on your behalf. The medical clinics are now rented to the Nova Scotia Health Authority, and they are operating them and using it for their purposes. This is a good news story, I think, for the community because it maintains a longevity of service for those locations. And in terms of recruitment and retention, like they're the ones who recruit and retain. We assist them. So this is moving in that direction, transitioning that away. And I'd say that that's the extent of what I would say around your budget. The total expenditures and revenues are $11.317 million. And there will be a report online that outlines this for your community, and you'll obviously have a copy of that as well. We like to call it the qualitative report, the one that explains all the numbers that are included. So that really completes my overview of the budget. There are some, if there are questions, I'm open to them. If there are comments, if council is now satisfied with that, we will continue to go through the motions. We need to do quite a few motions to confirm rates, et cetera, for the coming year. But I'll stop there for any questions.
Councillor Sonia.
Thank you. I'll add, just for those who don't know, that low-income rebate comes in the form of a tax reduction in their tax bill. It's not a check in the mail. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Surratt.
This goes to Ala, of course. I probably forgot this, but on the garbage, is that through the contract that it keeps on going up every year till our contract is done? I kind of forgot that part.
Yeah. When I say garbage collection, it's really a small description of what it actually is. It's garbage collection and disposal. So it's usually been half and half. So where your budget is about 50% collecting and then 50% dealing with that. Your contract for garbage goes up 3% a year. So that is an automatic. There is an additional cost in the contract that is for fuel escalation. So inside that contract, there's a rate for fuel, and if the actual cost of that fuel is higher, we're to be charged for that. And of course, that's for protection of the collection company. Secondly, you do have more population, I think, and usually garbage is an indication of that. So it doesn't necessarily cost you any more to collect it, but it certainly costs you more to deal with it. And those costs have gone up as well as the volume has gone up. So the combination of those two things are the reason why that cost is going up. There is good news in the future, and it has to do with the extended producer responsibility and the eventual elimination of costs relating to recycling, because that will then become a cost of the producer, the craft and the chips and all of those organizations of the world that may have recycling material. So what the concept is that the producer will pay. My understanding is that the cost of that is already embedded in the cost of that product. So it will eliminate that cost in the future for the municipality.
Thank you, Ala.
Any other questions? So I guess we have the budget, and we're ready to vote on that if there's no other questions.
Second.
Move to approve the operational budget as presented. If there's no other discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. The other item is transfer to capital reserve. And we're looking to move 300,000 of the 2023-24 operating surplus be transferred to the capital reserve for a total transfer to the capital reserve of $520,000 for 23-24 fiscal year. It's moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Operating reserve budget is attached. We need a motion for that one as well. Yes. Yep. Oh, you've got, I didn't see your light, sorry.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Operating reserve is really rather simple. It's your savings account. This indicates the amount of interest we're anticipating and the amount of expenses we're anticipating over here. As we stand right now, there's approximately when we collect the short-term loans, there will be approximately 2.9 million in your bank account. That is an accumulation of surpluses over the years. So basically, we're saying it's 134,000 on interest income, most likely, and there will be expenses, one of which is a forgiveness of loan to a fire department who had a 5-year, $100,000 loan given to them when they lost a fire truck. And if you recall, they got full recovery from the insurance, but then added more value to that truck and needed some cash to assist them to pay for it at that time. And again, if you remember, the reason why you agreed to that was because it actually eliminated the need to purchase a second truck for them in the future. So that loan forgiveness, you'll see 20,000 over the next 5 years. The transfer to operations is simply an estimate of the amount of money coming in from here to the operations to pay for one-time items. These are typically things that you may have you may have budgeted for in the past, and you didn't do it, and you're going to do it this year. So the money will come out of here because that's where the surplus would have gone in the first place. So money in one pocket only to come back to the other pocket is essentially what it is. I don't want to complicate it more than that. It's basically a savings account. We expect income over expenses of $87,100 in the budget. Again, if there are any questions, but we'd recommend approval.
Councillor Surratt.
Yeah, just a quick question. I was asked a couple of times on this from different people. So when we, before the taxes, one person was asked me, before the taxes start coming in, our money coming for the taxes, before the money starts coming in, I mean, we still have to pay our staff, we still have to, stuff we have to go. So do we go to the bank and borrow money to keep us afloat until we get those taxes coming in? Or is there, what do we do to keep afloat so we maybe don't go into, for a loan? I was asked twice that in the last month.
This is an excellent question. I'm going to start by saying you got an $11 million budget. If I divide that by 12, that means if everything was normalized and was paid for 1/12, it costs you about $920,000 a month to operate. So we don't collect cash for that until the end of May, starting into June, going into July. So April, May, and a good section of June, we don't actually collect taxes. We haven't billed it yet. We do not borrow from the bank. We borrow from ourselves. So the operating reserve is your savings account, and typically what happens is we bring this motion to you for approval. We're going to temporarily borrow $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 until such time as the taxes come in, and then the money is returned. It's done by motion when necessary. It's not every year, but it's most years. There is some cash that we've left behind in the operating fund, even if it truly belongs to the reserve. We left it there for cash flow purposes. Otherwise, we would be asking for a lot more, borrowing a lot more from the reserve. I hope that answers the
Oh,
question.
that's great, thank you.
If there's no more question, we need a motion. Moved by Councillor Bork. It was seconded, I think, I heard, yes. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. Sewer budget, financial approvals, sewer budget, operating capital 24-25, and all these have gone to each committee of the sewers, and they were all approved at those committee meetings. So, but we need a motion to approve these. So West Pubnico has remained the same. Wedgeport decreased by $35. Tusket went up by $10. And the proposed motion is to move that the council establish the following: the operating fee for West Pubnico, we can do it all in one motion, equivalent to $440. Operating fee for Wedgeport equivalent until equivalent unit is now $175, and the capital fee per equivalent is $550.98, and the operating fee for Tusket $355, and the capital fee per equivalent is $252. So we need a motion for this.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Did I hear? I heard a voice.
Came out of the woodwork.
Came out of the wall. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. East Pubnico water utility charge. Again, there's a motion here. Middle East Pubnico. This is East Pubnico Water Utility for 24-25. East Pubnico 3888.85 plus 413 per thousand imperial gallons. Lower East Pubnico 722.64 and a 1.5 inch pipe plus for a 1.5 inch pipe plus 244 per thousand imperial gallons. And Lower East Pubnico, we just did, there's two Lower East Pubnico, 1155.56 for a 2-inch pipe plus 244 per thousand imperial gallons.
Slow move.
Moved,
Second.
moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Fire area rates. These have all been, some of them are year 5 of 6, 6 of 10. The only one is West Pubnico's is year 1 of 2, but these have all been approved by their fire departments. So we need a motion to approve the fire rates. The area rates, sorry.
So,
Councillor Surratt.
Second.
It's moving seconded, Councillor Surratt? No? Okay.
so my question.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Interest rate, date on overdue accounts. And establish a rate of 13% and a cutoff date of Wednesday, July 31st, 2024 for past due taxes. We need a motion.
So moved.
Move-
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Residential and commercial rate. The rate has not been changed. It's still at $1.11 residential, $2.29 for commercial. We need a motion.
So moved.
Moved, seconded. Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. That covers all those. The next item is recognizing Argyle council announcements. Anybody who has anything they want to talk about? We have Councillor Bork.
Thank you, Warden. Just to mention that Waste Check did come to our community center this week to talk about garbage, explain, it's information session, and it was very good. They explained where the garbage went, and I think the people understood a little bit clearer of what happens with the recyclables and all that, and they had a lot of questions. They brought their garbage from home to see where they would put these certain things, so it was very, very good. They were very engaged in the conversation. That was really good. I was glad that we had about 30 people that showed up, so that's pretty good. Also, we had a video at our bike park that was done. Recreation did a video, and we had a few kids there and a couple of adults, few adults that was there as well. So that's going to be, it's a video for advertisement of our bike park. So Recreation will probably have that somewheres along the road on our website, hopefully. And I'm just going to mention probably our counselors from West Pubnico are aware of this, and I think all councillors are invited, I'm not sure. The 50th anniversary of the Nouveau Horizon de la Baronnie is going to happen tomorrow. They're having a supper, so...
Yeah, you have to register. If you're
Yeah, I'm attending that tomorrow.
Yes.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. We're getting a great response for the Veterans Banner program, and we will be taking applications up until the end of May, and then we'll see, according to how many applications we have, whether or not we're going to have to draw names or if everyone that's applied will be will get the chance to have a banner put up in a veteran's honor. So if anyone has any questions or concerns about the banners or the applications, by all means, they can give me a call, and I will be glad to help them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing nobody else, we have the warden's report. There's an attachment. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Committee reports. Does anybody have a committee that they've attended that they want to report on? Councillor Surratt.
I'd like just to mention that the Mariner Center Board last night voted to approve the operating budget. The capital budget, Alain, I think capital budget, is that on hold? If you could answer that. I know the operating budget was passed. I forget what the number was. It was just about brain dead when I left there. We were 3 hours into it. Wow. But I want to tell you one thing. It's certainly opened my eyes. A lot of money, and we're looking at probably a deficit that the 3 units have to pay us around in the operating $900,000. It's a big deficit, but that's Mariners on Main and Mariner Center both.
Yes.
So it's a huge amount, but it's not something we were paying the YMCA years ago, like I mentioned at the meeting last night. So if you add everything together, we're pretty well on target, maybe just a little bit higher. But the capital, I'm not sure. Just, Alain, I kind of forget what happened there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we basically did not pass the capital budget. There's some additional questions that needed answers to, including the nature of the roof project.
Yes.
And there were a couple other projects that needed a bit more information. I think at the end of the day, everybody was a bit tired and they preferred not to make a decision under that fatigue. The Mariners on Main and the Mariners Center costs the request from those organizations is $141,000 and change and $146,000 and change respectively.
Thank you.
Also,
Yeah,
if I
go
could,
ahead.
just one more, is the airport. We had our meeting yesterday afternoon, and things are going well. The task force is slowly crawling, doing some things, looking at what's needed at the airport, what has to be done, how can we, spur a little more economic activity there. We're meeting with Superior Robotics, which have signed a contract. They've signed, we're meeting with them on the 17th, the principals, the owners, and having a meet and greet with the board. And otherwise than that, the operation for the weather balloons, that seems to be coming online, and there'll be some other revenue coming in from the weather balloons. That should be coming down the road. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Deputy Warden.
Thank you. Just for the Mariner Center Expansion Board, because our Argyle Recreation Commission meeting is this week, so as well as we haven't had one since, but just wanted to mention, I just chatted quickly with our project manager, Mark Brophy, just before the meeting, just to say what is the latest and greatest update, and he said they're still working on the tender documents, hoping to have them out by June. So just wanted to give you that update.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bork.
Yes, just to mention that the Western County Region Library, we had our budget meeting and it was approved. We had a Zoom meeting on that. So, and then we're having our AGM audits in that next month. So that's just there. And we're having a joint police advisory meeting next week.
Thank you. Councillor Surratt.
This will go to Nicole. Nicole, on the MCB, I've been asked by a few people about when can we expect shovels in the ground at the Mariner? Is there any kind of indication there?
Well, if I had a magic wand, it all depends on.
Oh, sorry.
It all depends on how things go with the tender. If things go well and we stay within budget, shovels should be in the ground by fall.
Okay. Thank you.
Nobody else? We had a meeting, Nikhil meeting, a special meeting to go over the budget, and it was a very short meeting. They presented the new budget for Nikhil, so, and it was passed, so. There's been a lot of changes in Nikhil, as we all know, with the new administrator, and changes are happening, but it looks like it's being accepted, the changes are being accepted fairly well. I mean, there's some better than others, but it's working. Okay, if there's nobody else, 7-day notice. Article P5, hiring and probation of staff. You've had a chance to read that. There's quite a few additions or changes to that. Are there any questions? Councillor Saulnier.
Thank you. I guess this goes to Alain. I didn't see any mention of nepotism on this. Should there be?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Sonia. We have a nepotism policy in force, like separate to this, that would come into play.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Again, it's our 7-day notice, so it'll be dealt with at the next meeting. Article P16, Christmas bonus. Any questions? There's, again, a few changes on this one. Councillor Surratt.
I didn't see anything for councillors. That's up. Oh, so that's off. Just a joke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make the comments that the changes to this policy, it exists. We didn't change the amount, but we just wanted clarification on who it applies to, because every year we're questioning who does it apply to, and I think we just put some new language there so that we know who is entitled to getting the Christmas bonus.
Okay. Next one is Article P39, 4-day work week attachment. Now, I don't know, there's a few changes on this one. Pardon me?
Job sharing.
Job sharing, I missed one. Well, can we do this one first, since I'm there?
You're in charge.
It's a lot of work to go back.
More share your job.
Okay, any questions on this? Again, this will come up. It's a 7-day notice. I can't go back there.
Refresh.
Job sharing right there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. I was on that.
You were.
I just mentioned, I
just-
just used the wrong.
Yeah, you were just in the wrong section. We just
We
talked
just,
about
we just
job
talked,
sharing.
we just talked about job sharing. Yeah, I went down
You
for
did.
decision. I'm getting tired too. These meetings are usually done in half hour,
Yeah,
right?
yours are. Yours are.
For decision, let's try again. Bylaw 27A, solid waste resource. Again, there's changes on this one. Now, we've discussed these, we had our 7-day notice on these already, and we had the questions. Are there any other questions on this?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Article P14, vacation policy. Again, few changes. Any other questions?
Slow move, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Job sharing.
Slow move. This is quite a show tonight.
4-day work week.
Dinner and a movie.
Nothing like having fun at a meeting, eh?
300%. So, second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Correspondence and for information, we have, is there another one? Executive meeting, all end of May. We looked at that, that came to as an email. We usually don't have our executive meeting at the end of May because it's usually the end of fishing and there's haul up and whatever. Do we want to have a meeting the week before? Is there anything that we should be discussing? Is that the meeting where we approve all the financial requests? And, we have a few things. I have no problem, well, I'm not the chair
I'm okay.
on that meeting, but I have no problem in having a meeting the week before, which would be the 23rd. So if that's okay, do we need a motion for that or just, okay, I have Councillor D'Entremont.
Yeah, I guess as a fisherman, there's no guarantee I'll be here, but I guess my question is staff have time to prepare all that stuff? Is that going to be a problem?
Thank you.
I think, well, it's the 9th today. I think that the agenda might be a little light because of the short span between the two meetings. The answer is yes. We will have sufficient time, and if we don't, we'll obviously put that into the next meeting. I will note that it will be myself and Julie who will be at this meeting. There are some that are attending AMA Spring that will not be in attendance, so we'll be at least two strong here at that meeting.
Councillor Surratt.
I was just going to say, I just thought of it now, because I did agree on the email. There'll be, Councillor D'Entremont would be the only, and I'm sure, I shouldn't say it like this, but the only one. And, and he may not be here the 23rd. Would it help to have all your things on the end of the month? But, I mean, I don't certainly want Councillor D'Entremont to miss the meeting either.
Totally up to council, totally.
Yeah, flip a coin, right? Yeah, and I don't have a problem. Whatever the 23rd is good with me. That's okay, no problem.
Yep. Okay, so I guess it's just consensus that we're going to have that? On the 23rd? Or should we have a motion? We don't need a motion for that. That'll be a short meeting, will it?
We'll make sure to put some content on there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll send you some. Okay. Now, correspondence. Letter to the Honorable John Law and Service Exchange, the Service Exchange. This came from Colchester. I don't know if everybody read that or if they have any questions. Invitation for selection process for the host municipality of the 46th Finale des Jeux. We're not, did the municipality apply for that? No.
No,
It's just
for us
just
to
to consider application.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
That's not the regional, that's the big one.
Oh, yeah, we had it here before. It was a
2012.
yeah. That's when we made the, no, is that when we had the track? Yeah.
That's right.
Public engagement on the marine Conservation Network Plan for Scotia and Shelf Bay Funde Bioregion. Low-income exemptions, that's what we discussed in the tax exemption. That's what we discussed with the budget. Correspondence from Oceans and Fisheries Canada. It's a letter that we had sent, and I think it has to do with the wharf, one of the wharfs in Pubnico. And then we got a response on that. Memo to CAO, plow truck tender. There's a recommendation, I think they're recommending that we get it from, where is it? Regulatory quotes. I know, oh yeah, Little Chevrolet. Go ahead.
I'm going to ask council what your preferences are on this. Typically, what we do is when we have a budget that was approved by this council, and the bids that come in done competitively come in under that number, we typically bring the memo for information only. We do that for a couple of reasons. It's usually for expediency. It's usually speed, like, because you told us to do something, we did it, let's go do it. So usually we put it for information. However, there are other municipalities that really want to have two motions, right? One is the motion to budget, and the other is the motion to approve the selection. I don't have a legal opinion or anything of that nature to support whether that's the right thing to do or not. I fully admit that the practice that we've utilized is the one I just described. And there have been times where I sense certain discomfort around the table around these decisions because they would like to support it by motion. So I just want to put that out there to council and see what your preference might be, whether you're satisfied with the situation. We can take a minute and double check what the MGA actually tells us to do. Obviously, two motions is never wrong. I mean, you're not breaking any rules by saying, yeah, go ahead. I think it's just from a practical perspective, that's been our practice. And I just want to raise that as a potential discussion point, because you can sense a little discomfort in the room, and I don't want that. So that's basically what's going on here.
Go ahead, Councillor Surratt.
I would certainly like for you to check the MGA. That certainly would be the way to go, to be sure we're doing this properly. Yeah. I can make that motion that we accept, so then we're sure.
There's nothing, yeah.
I mean, I'll make that motion just to cover, but in the meantime, if you could check it, maybe report at next meeting, that's okay. So I made that motion.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Carried. Marketing Levy Ad Hoc Committee, Deputy CAO.
You should be good, Councillor Surratt, I would say. Yeah. Yeah. It's just for information. It's just for information. At the last meeting, you made a motion to create an ad hoc committee to look at the marketing levy. So we're looking into that, but by looking at one of our policies that you have, the citizens' appointment to committees and commission and boards, we need to make amendments to that policy to create this ad hoc committee. So I'm just letting you know that you will receive notice probably tomorrow of a 7-day notice to make the amendment on this policy so that we can deal with the ad hoc committee. So I'm just kind of giving you notice that it's coming. That's all I want to make you aware, just for information. So there's no conflict of interest here, Councillor Surratt. That's all I want to share.
Okay. Before I go to the next, Alain, discussion we had, or you had, I talked to him as well, with Kenneth DeVoe. Is there something we're supposed to bring here tonight?
I think that. Sorry, we just received information on a potential, I guess, sponsorship or endorsement of a potential new service in the area. We just got the information today. I think the application deadline for this kind of thing is at the end of the month. The fact that we have a 23rd meeting, I
Okay,
think we're good.
we can bring that up.
Yeah,
at
I
the
think
meeting.
I'd be more comfortable bringing
Yeah,
that
because
there.
I'm not, I would have a hard time.
Well, it's like
discussing
hot
this.
off the presses, and it's not fair to
Yeah,
council
it's-
to,
yeah.
yeah.
So, financial requests are deferred. Agenda topics for next meeting or notice of motion. Councillor Surratt?
I have it's not a notice of motion, but question I've got is got to do with the Mariner Center and a representative. We're missing a representative from the public, I think. And I don't know if maybe I've been told this, but I've probably forgotten. Should the Mariner Center the board be sending a request again? Because I think the request was made that we needed a citizen rep, and I know it hasn't been filled, and I've had a few times, we've had tough time to get quorum, and we had to call a person to be on there last night to have a quorum for our budget. So is it a letter we're supposed, do you know if we should be sending from the board a letter? Maybe you don't have that answer. Maybe I should question the Mariner Center board. From the eyes I've seen there, what I'll do, I'll talk to the board and send a request back. Because if you haven't had that request, you can't ask for a civilian or a citizen. Yeah. I think from the eyes, I'll be asking the board to send a request. Thank you.
That request will be sent. Yep.
Okay. Any questions on question period? No questions. We have an in-camera, so motion to go in camera.
Motion to go in camera.
And